Everybody, this video is to give you an overview of the syllabus and Canvas so that you know what to expect as far as the assignments and the quizzes, how the grading scale is going to work, what our course learning objectives and student learning outcomes are. That basically just means what our educational goals are for this class, and how everything's going to lay out in Canvas. As you go through week to week and look at these modules, I want you to understand what you're looking for and what you're seeing. So let's start with an overview of Canvas. This is the home page of our course in Canvas. At the very top, I have a discussion board that's going to be open to you throughout the duration of the semester. It's called the Coffee Shop, and the idea is to create a space where you can go and collaborate with your peers. Now, we have two different high schools participating in this particular class. We have Avenel High School and we have Mendota High School. And each of you have your own physical classrooms, your own physical cohort, groups of students that you can work with together, communicate about the course assignments, the course content, study together and that type of thing, and that's great. But I want to give you a place where you can get together with the students from the other high school campus as well, so that you can open up your collaborative opportunities by asking questions about the content or about the assignments, and by sharing your thoughts about the content or the assignments. Now, if you have a question that's more specific to you, of course, always feel free to send me an email and I'll answer it directly. But if you have a general question about the course content, this is a great place to post it, because your peers can get involved in answering that question. And I'm going to be checking the coffee shop regularly so I can answer that question for you, but do it in a public forum so that anybody else who has that question can find the answer there as well. All right, so that's the purpose of the coffee shop and how to use it. And to do so, you just click into here. You're going to post your question or your comment and then hit post reply, and then it'll show up over here. So I'll start off by saying, hey class, welcome to the coffee shop. Okay, and I'm going to post that, and here it is. All right, so now when you're ready to post your own question or your own thought, you can just do it right in here. Or if you're going to reply to a previous question or someone else's post, you can do it directly in that post. All right, so that's the coffee shop. Let's go back to the home page. All right, in this first module, it's basically a welcome module. So I have a video in which I introduce myself. We have the syllabus here. It's a PDF copy, so you can download it. You can print it, whatever works best for you. Here is where this video is, going through the syllabus and Canvas. Then I have a course overview video where I walk through the course in general to let you know what to expect, some of the themes we're going to be looking at, and just, again, a very basic overview of this course. And then we're ready to get started. The next module is the research paper. So be looking at this. In the section of this video where I go through the syllabus, I'm going to talk about this in greater detail, but start looking at this right away. Know what's expected. Read through this in depth so that you know how each step of this research process is going to work. It's worth 100 points, so you don't want to procrastinate on this. You want to actually put forth your best effort and work ahead on it. But you'll have 3 topics to choose from. Each of those topics will have specific questions that you'll need to answer in your paper. You'll have the sources already provided for you. So here's the list of the 4 articles that you're going to have to read if you choose topic number 1, and you find those sources right here. So those 4 sources I just pointed to in this kind of instructions page for topic number 1 are right here, and so on and so forth for these next topics. But again, I'll go over the different steps in a little more depth when we talk about the syllabus, or when I go through the syllabus. All right, here's week 1, and this is kind of how a module will lay out. Some modules will have more pages or tabs in them, some will have less. So in week one here, if we click into the welcome to week one, and every week's module will have a welcome to week whatever title on it, right? And that's going to basically give you a summary of what the schedule is for the week, things that we need to accomplish. Now, since we added some students late to this course, I've bumped these due dates back for these first two assignments. Okay, one of the first two assignments is the introductory survey. It's an automatic 5 points if you complete it, but you need to complete it all the way. I'll go through that here shortly. And then this first quiz on the reading from chapter 22. Both of these will be due by Monday, January 20th. All right. Then it also directs you as to what to start working toward for the following week. So you'll need to start reading both chapter 23 and chapter 24 for week 2, because that's what the second week's quiz will cover. All right, so that's basically what these welcome to week 1, welcome to week 2, and so on and so forth, first pages will be in each week's module. All right, so we know we have the introductory survey and quiz 1 due by January 20th, and here's where you find them in that same module. Let's take a look at the introductory survey. Again, this is a no wrong answer survey. Share what you will, just be sincere in it. Automatic 5 points as long as you complete it. Let's take a look at some of the questions in here. All right, so what are your academic interests? What are some of your interests outside of school? What are your goals for this class? What are your academic goals overall? What's your favorite movie or television show that's based on a historical figure or event, and why do you like it? How much time do you plan on devoting to this course each week? What type of teaching or instructional approach do you enjoy the most and helps you learn best? And then here are a couple of not questions, but commitments that I need you to make. One is about the effort that you're going to put forth in this class, all right, to help be a contributor to a positive learning environment. And so once you read this and you're committing to that, you're going to just type in your name right here and submit it, okay? This one here is very important. This is about the academic honesty policy of West Hills College. And the big thing that it revolves around is plagiarism. So as you collaborate with your peers, just make sure that each assignment and your research paper are your own work. It's great to collaborate. I encourage collaboration. But if you turn in the same work, even if it just has a couple words changed here and there, that's still the same work. It needs to be your own work. If you turn in the same work as a peer, it's going to get a 0. If you turn in work that's taken off of a website, it's going to be a 0. So don't violate the plagiarism aspect of the academic honesty policy. Make sure you understand it. Make sure you know that plagiarism isn't just word for word. It's taking someone's words, thoughts, or ideas. And it could come from a book, article, website, podcast, video, or fellow student, among other sources. Just make sure you're not taking anyone's words, thoughts, or ideas as your own. Produce your own work, all right? So commit to that. Read through it all in depth. Commit by typing your name here. And then lastly, are you facing any challenges or do you have any concerns about your ability to succeed in this class? Let me know up front. It gives me the opportunity to support you the best that I possibly can. Now, on some of these, why does it help for me to know this information? Well, I just like to get to know my students. And in an online setting, sometimes that's a little bit more difficult than if I was in a classroom with you. And so this is just an opportunity for me to get to know a little bit more about you as a student. Again, share just whatever you're comfortable sharing, but just make sure you're sincere in each one of your answers. And that, again, you commit to question 8 and question 9 and read those thoroughly to make your commitments honestly. And then, again, I share kind of my backstory with you so you get to know me as an instructor in the Meet Your Instructor video. Okay, so that's the survey due by Monday, January 20th. All right, let's go back to the home page and let's take a look at the syllabus. All right. Now, you can also find the syllabus, by the way, in this syllabus tab. It's just a little bit harder to go through the course calendar because we don't have delineating lines here. So I like looking at the PDF version. So let's go back to that. Open it up here. So here's our syllabus. All right. This is a historical survey of the United States from the end of the Civil War to the present. All right, so from 1865 to the present. Now, I'm going to go through these course objectives and the student learning outcomes because they're important to know, because these are the goals that the college has set forth for us to fulfill. The course objectives are things that we want to accomplish throughout the course, throughout this semester. The student learning outcomes are what we will have demonstrated competency in by the end of this semester. All right. Number one in the course objectives, describe the effects of the Reconstruction period upon the nation. The Reconstruction period is a period of roughly 12 years from 1865 to 1877. It's what you're reading about in chapter 22. So this is where we kick off our course. All right, and during that Reconstruction period, it's right after the end of slavery. The end of the Civil War results in the abolition of slavery in the United States of America. And now the country had to figure out how to regroup, how to rebuild itself, how to reconcile the northern states and southern states, but most importantly, how to redefine the meanings and boundaries of freedom to include a large group, roughly 4 million Americans who weren't included in American freedom prior to that point, and that is the emancipated slaves, African Americans. All right, and so there is some pivotal changes that take place in American law and in the American Constitution and in American freedom during that 12-year period of 1865 to 1877. Not all things got fixed. There were some failures to the Reconstruction period, but there were also some major successes, some major changes to how Americans would live going forward. All right. Second one, understand the influence of industrial and technological development on the political, economic, and social aspects of the United States. This is something we're going to see throughout this course. All right, we see a major shift to an industrial economy after the Civil War. So between 1865 and 1900, our whole economic landscape is shifting, and that has a lot of implications on the political and social landscape as well, as people moved off the farms and into the city and into industrial jobs, and people started to immigrate here from other countries looking for work and just opportunities in general. How that changed the social landscape and how the political landscape responded to all of that. We're going to see throughout the course, but we'll see a lot of it just even in the first 35 years that we'll be covering. Demonstrate the ability to interpret primary and secondary sources. Let's talk about that briefly. A primary source means it's something that was created at or directly around the time that we're studying. So if we are studying Reconstruction, then if we're looking at a primary source, it's going to be something that was written between 1865 and 1877, or right around that period. That would be considered a primary source. Your textbook, something that's written about the past, but in the present or far after the time period that we're studying, that's considered a secondary source. So you need to demonstrate the ability to interpret both of those types of sources and then compose an argument that uses them as appropriate for support. We will be doing that regularly in our week-to-week source analysis assignments, but you'll also do that in your research paper. Demonstrate an understanding of U.S. history through multiple analytical categories such as race, class, gender, and ethnicity. We are absolutely going to cover that. Look, one of the themes that we're looking at, the major theme we're looking at, is how American freedom has been redefined, both in its meaning, like what does it mean to be free in America, and its boundaries, who has access to that freedom. And a big part of that story is based on race, class, gender, and ethnicity as different groups that have been excluded from American freedom throughout American history have gained that freedom, have gained access to that freedom. All right, so we're going to be looking at that when it comes to African Americans, Latino Americans, women, Asian Americans, various groups that have been excluded from certain rights and certain aspects of American freedom, who have then struggled and fought for their rightful place within that sphere to enjoy those freedoms. We're going to demonstrate an understanding of America's growth in a global context. At the end of the 1800s and then all the way through the 1900s and now into the 21st century, America has become increasingly important on a global stage, both as a producer and consumer of goods, but also militarily and politically. So we're going to look at that culturally as well. All right, we're going to explain the major economic, technological, and scientific developments and their historical significance. That's pretty self-explanatory. We're going to analyze major political trends, attitudes, conflicts, and events, including both mainstream and reform efforts, and explain their historical significance. And then we're going to explain the major social and cultural developments, their causes and effects, and their historical significance. All right, in those last three, F, G, and H, you see historical significance. So we're looking at changes in the economy, in technology, in science, in politics, in attitudes, in social and cultural developments. We're looking at all those things, and most importantly, their significance. How have they shaped the America that we live in today? And then lastly, analyze the relevance of history in today's world. And that's really what we're talking about when we look at historical significance, right? Forming those connections, understanding why they matter to us today. And that's an important part of studying history. All right, so that's what we will accomplish throughout the course. Student learning outcomes. These are the things that we need to demonstrate competency in by the end of this course. All right, so let's look at these. These are three very important goals to keep in mind. The student will identify, explain, and analyze the role of important historical figures, events, and ideas to United States history since 1865. That is like standard, a standard survey course goal, right? We just at least need to know who played an important role in shaping U.S. history. What events played an important role? What ideas have helped to shape U.S. development throughout history, right? So that's what we're going to accomplish by the end of this course, and we will mostly demonstrate that through our quizzes and our exams. Number two, the student will recognize and analyze the causes of important historical events and the effects of those events on United States history since 1865. This is going to be accomplished largely through our assignments on a week in and week out basis. All right, because this is where we're not just able to identify, but we're analyzing causes and the effects. All right, so in a way, we need to be able to not just look at an event, but also see what led up to that event, what resulted out of that event, and kind of critically think about the role that that event has played in shaping American history. And then lastly, the student will interpret, analyze, and evaluate historical research, including primary and secondary sources, maps, and archaeological evidence. And again, we're going to accomplish that in our source analysis assignments each week, but we will also accomplish that greatly in our research paper. And we'll talk about that more in depth. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this word for word, or I would put you into a coma, if not just to sleep. So I'm just going to say that look at these keys to success. I think it's really important for you to know how to set yourself up for success. This is coming from two aspects of my own experience. One, my experience as an instructor, looking for things that I see in students who have had great success in my courses, and areas where I've seen if students just apply themselves a little bit more in this area or that area, they could have bumped their grade up here or there. And I want you to achieve the goal you set for yourself, and I want you to get a great grade in this course. And these are my keys to success to kind of help you get off to the best start possible. But it's also coming from my experience as a student, areas where I know if I would have devoted myself a little bit more to engaging the class in every session or planning more effectively. That was a big one for me because I was a procrastinator as a student. I put things off to the last minute, which means that I didn't complete some things that I should have, and I didn't do my best on some things when I should have, right? So we should always aim to complete all of our assignments, always study and do our best on everything that we're turning in. That's going to result in a great grade and we'll feel better about our experience. So these are coming from my experiences as a teacher and a student. So engage the class, talk to each other, work together, collaborate, use the coffee shop to communicate between campuses, plan effectively, form a community, read thoroughly, take notes, and then lastly, get extra help whenever you need it. You know, if you have support staff, other faculty on your campus that's there to help you, they're there to help you. Take advantage of that. You know, don't try to navigate through this alone. Ask me questions whenever you have questions. Use the coffee shop to get additional support. And then the school, meaning West Hills, the college offers various programs to help students, and these exist for a reason. So if any of these apply to you, take advantage of them. You're not alone. And here is a link to where you can actually access those resources to learn more about them. All right, I'm going to scroll through to the grading. The grading is basically structured in this manner. 515 points possible. We have 130 worth in the weekly assignments, 160 in the weekly quizzes. By the way, the weekly quizzes are open notes, open book. All right, so these should be places where you can score high as long as you're doing your due diligence and going to your textbook to get the information. And then make notes of that because a lot of the questions from these quizzes will show up on exams. All right, the research project, 100 points. The midterm and final combined, 125 points. Here's how the grading scale breaks down. And then here is your course schedule. So every week you will have the topic or chapter that we're covering in any given week. So in week 1, we're covering Reconstruction. Here's the time period we're looking at. Here's the chapter we're reading out of, right? Here's what's due. These are old dates, okay? So I'll update this, but because we had students get added late, I've pushed these back again to Monday the 20th, all right? But after that, everything starts to land on the appropriate date. So always know what date these things are due and be working toward accomplishing them. All right, so over here, we've got the coursework, the things that are due, the things you need to be working on. And over here is just kind of an overview of what time period and what topic we're covering in that given week. If you look ahead, we've got step 1 of the research paper due on February 14th. Step 2 of the research paper due on March 6th. We have our midterm on April, well, it's just going to be due by March 27th. And then we go into April and we've got our final research paper due April 3rd. All right, so these steps of the research paper, you need to be working towards constantly. And I'll talk about that going forward here in just a second. Let's get down to the final exam. So the midterm covers all of the chapters, it has questions from all of the chapters that we'll be covering up to the point that we take the midterm. The final exam is a 2-part, 50 multiple choice questions worth a total of 50 points, covering the second part of the semester, weeks 12 through 18, so those weeks after the midterm. And these chapters, 35 through 41. So it's not going to overlap. It's not what we call comprehensive, where it's going all the way back to the start of the course. It's just really the second part of this class that it's covering. But there is one comprehensive written question that's worth 25 points. It's a big chunk of your final exam score that actually asks you to think back and go back through everything we've learned in this course to answer a question about, again, the theme of the meanings and boundaries of freedom and how that's changed for a particular people group. All right, so I'll give you a study guide to help you prepare for that, but just be, aware that that's how the final exam will be structured. All right, let's talk about the research paper. This is the last thing that I'll cover. So we're almost through this video. 3 steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3. It's scaffolded so that you can work on it in pieces and kind of stay on track to getting this final paper completed by this date. But let me explain, even though this is worth 75 points and step 2 is only worth 20, this is probably the most important step, step 2. Because if you do an excellent job on step 2, then you will do an excellent job most likely on step 3. Because to do step 2 well, you will have needed to have read every single one of your sources for your chosen topic thoroughly, and you will need to create an outline of notes answering your research papers or topics prompt. Okay, I'll talk about that in a little more depth here. And you will need to have started your paper, the introductory paragraph. So you have one written paragraph, your intro paragraph, and an outline for all of your subsequent paragraphs that have notes pertaining to the sources to answer, these different questions that you'll find in your topic's prompt. Okay, that might sound confusing to you, but just know, I'll explain in more depth, just know that this step 2, is probably the most important step, because if you do a great job with your intro paragraph, that means you already know how you're going to write this paper, where you're heading with it. If you do a great job on your outline with great notes from each source in your topic, then those will just convert to paragraphs and the paper will basically write itself. So make sure you focus a lot of time and attention here. If you haven't read all of your sources and taken good detailed notes, you will not be able to complete step 2 adequately, which means not only will you not earn the full 20 points, but you'll have a much harder time ahead of you completing the final paper. All right, so just keep an eye on those dates. All right, let's go back really quickly, and I want to walk you through the research paper just a little bit more briefly. All right, let's say you choose topic number 1. These are the 4 sources you have to read. Here is the prompt. This is what you need to address in your paper. So I'm talking about the prompt. It is these different questions and points that you need to discuss in your paper. You need to know these to know what you're looking for when you read your sources. So before you start reading any of these, know what things you need to be looking for in these sources to take good notes as you read through these sources. So when I talk about step 2 and the outline that you have to make and the introductory paragraph that you have to write, it has to be centered on these prompts. Okay, so each outline section that covers each one of these sources needs to have notes that pertain to these questions and points. All right, and your introductory paragraph needs to show that your paper is going to answer these questions and points that are in the prompt. All right, so that's what I'm talking about in step 2 when I talk about the prompt. Step 1 is actually the easiest step, which is why it's worth 5 points, and the others are worth 20 and 75 points. All right. Step 1 is going to be choosing your topic. So let's say I choose topic number 1. All right, that's the first thing I need to submit in this assignment. My topic choice, topic number 1. My bibliography. That means I need to create a bibliography for these 4 sources, right? If I chose chapter 1. I've given you all the information you need to create your bibliography. You just need to put it in the right format and the right order. All right? But I've given you everything you need to know there. And lastly, author biographies. That is a short 3 to 5 sentence paragraph telling me something about the author. Each author. You need to do one for each of the authors in your topic. Always need to include all of your sources in your paper, in your outline, and in your author biographies and bibliography. All right, so let's take this first guy, James Nuchterlein. All right, I would have to Google him, and then I'm going to look up his academic and professional experience. If they're a professor, you're probably going to find something on like a university website, a faculty page where it talks about where they studied, where they earned their degrees, what they teach, where they teach, what they've published, other books, other articles, that type of thing. Those are the things that I want you to find and note in your short 3 to 5 sentence biography for each author, okay? 3 to 5 sentences for him, 3 to 5 sentences for him, 3 to 5 sentences for him, 3 to 5 sentences for him. I don't want to know that they live in Connecticut with a wife, 2 kids, and a dog. I don't need to know any of that information. We're looking for information that tells us why this person should be considered an authoritative figure in this area, why they are a good source of information. All right, so we want to know about their academic and professional and writing experience. All right, so that's what the author biographies are intended to accomplish. Why do we do that? Because we live in an information age where we're seeing information come from all different sources through social media and this and that, and quite frankly, we need to know where our information comes from. Because if we just believe stuff and take it at face value without knowing who the source is and whether or not they're credible, meaning believable, then we're going to put ourselves at a huge disadvantage. So we should always vet our sources and always know who wrote what we're reading, what their agenda is, what their experience level is, and whether or not they should be taken seriously, quite frankly. All right? So that's the purpose of that. Okay, that's Canvas and the syllabus. I know it was a long video. I'm sorry. I tried to make it as brief as possible, but this is important stuff, and I want you to be set up for success. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the coffee shop here so I can answer them publicly for everyone to see, or you can feel free to email me as well. Let's have a great semester.